welcome to our channel. We're Mia and Ryan, and we've been living in vans for 2 years now. This week we want to share with you our experiences and lessons that we've learned over the last 2 years. If you're new here and you have any questions or just want to say hi, leave us a comment below and we'll get back to you ASAP. That being said, let's get started. So lesson number 1 is be flexible and open to change. When you're living on the road, no plan is always the best plan. Back in 2022, we spent 3 months converting our beloved 1994 Mitsubishi Delica. It was a 4-wheel drive and we loved that thing. We started our journey from southeast Queensland and did a quick month-long trip into New South Wales, and we had the intentions of making our way up to Cape York, but the rain that year had been absolutely relentless. So we had a great time heading up the coast, and we got to Cairns and we decided we'd head west for a little bit just to see if the rain would ease a little bit. We made it all the way out to Budjamala, or Lawn Hill as it's also known, and the rain didn't stop. So we just decided to keep going and ended up in the Northern Territory. Plans completely obliterated. We had to completely abandon the plan that we'd had for the 6 months previous to that. And I think it was a good decision in the end. We just changed our plans and we're not going up the Cape anymore. We have decided to go to the NT and go exploring there before we head back to Sunny Coast later on that way. Woo!
But if we had a strict plan, say we had some campsites booked, say we had a week block booked somewhere, we kind of would have thought that we had to go back towards Cairns rather than just continue on and do what we want. So it was good to have no real plan, that we could just go with the flow.
Yeah, which brings us to lesson 2, and that's compromise for what you want.
Whenever we got to the NT, it was pretty much bang on peak season. So one of the compromises we had to make was to avoid the crowds. But we found that going to places super early, so if we got up at 6 AM and hiked out to a waterfall or whatever before tour buses and stuff like that arrived, then you would have the whole place to yourself.
Off to Maguk again today. Yesterday was crazy busy. There are a lot of pool noodles, so we're gonna head back now.
10:30.
Yep, it's a good time to beat the crowds, and that way we can prolong our stay, because crowds started coming in about 9ish yesterday. Yeah.
By the bus load.
Yeah, literally.
But if you're just, trying to hit a lot of spots all in the one day or whatever, you're going to run into a lot of crowds and stuff. And we find that when we're at those special places and it's absolutely rammed with people, it's not even worth going.
Holy hell.
Want to go back to the outback?
Yes. Way too busy here for us.
I know some people have a bucket list and they have things that they want to see no matter what, and maybe you're on a tight schedule and you can compromise on something else instead. So for us, we find that compromising on heat or flies or getting up early is worth it if there's less crowds to deal with, but we know that it's just not always realistic. So sometimes you might have to compromise by paying a bit extra to stay in a prime spot that you want to, or driving a bit further to get to a spot that's available,
or booking much further in advance.
Yeah, like if you sit down and do the work and actually book that. Going back to point number 1, we don't really book things in advance, so we know if we're going to WA and stuff that we're going to have to compromise and actually sit down and make a plan. So lesson number 3.
Carry more water than you think you need, or carry 2 sources of water. So while we're in the Northern Territory, we want to give ourselves a quick taste of WA. So we thought we'd duck over and head over to the northern west part out in the Kimberleys. And we made our way over to Pernalulu, or the Bungle Bungles as they're also known. And while we were there, we met a couple of other travellers who were telling us about a place called Harry's Hole. And it wasn't too far from there. It was about, an hour or something?
It was on the way back.
Yeah.
To Connemara, so.
We were heading in that direction that day, and it's not on Google Maps, and we thought, oh yeah, we'll go and check this place out for ourselves. They told us our vehicle had perfect clearance and everything. They did tell us of a few river crossings. Anyway, we went. We got through the river crossings just fine and had a blast in the afternoon, apart from the march flies. But we had a great time. That night, long story short, we didn't make it out. We tried to leave the campsite and we drowned our vehicle. You'll see that video up here, I'll link it if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's a long story.
Anyway, it was a very surreal experience, and if we didn't have extra water with us, then it definitely would have been a problem. We had a 15-kilometer walk back to a highway where there's pretty much no passing traffic, and at 8 a.m. it was 36 degrees and there was no shade. If we didn't carry the extra water on the top of our roof, we would have been screwed.
So the water inside the van, it was in a jerry can, but the river water came up higher than the level of the jerry can and filled it up. So we just couldn't drink it. So luckily we had a sealed 20-litre jerry on the roof. It saved us.
It did. It really did. So that brings us to lesson 4, which is don't travel without insurance and an emergency fund. Very important.
So the van was buried in water over the dash, and it was in the water for 36 hours. So it was a bit of a handling to get the car recovered. I phoned a local recovery place and they recommended calling the insurance because it was going to be $3,500 to even go and start the job. So luckily the insurance did cover the tow. The total bill on that ended up being $4,600 just to pull the car out of the river and tow it back to the highway. We did have the van insured as well, but when we bought the van we got insurance on it and then done the fit out, and we had planned to get an agreed value done on it once the fit out was complete, but we were just so in a hurry to get on the road that we didn't get round to it.
Completely forgot.
Never really thought about it again, but yeah,
we got a very small amount.
We got market value on a 30-year-old van, so it wasn't very much.
So make sure your insurance policy and everything is all up to date before you go.
But covering the tow was a huge help because we would have had to pay that out of our own pocket and then get, reimbursed, whereas it going through the insurance, they just sorted it all out. So that was definitely well worth having. So after losing everything, lost our vehicle, which was our home, we were literally left with nothing. So we landed a job back in the NT. So we headed back over there and had a plan to buy a new van. It wasn't long after that we found out that Mia was pregnant.
Before we started the job.
So it was the perfect time because the job was going to allow us to fund a new van, but it also had a lot of time off. We had 2 weeks of every month off work, so it gave us plenty of time to work, earn money, and then time off to build a van. Yeah, so the second part of that point was always make sure you have an emergency fund. So we bought a new van, which is the Sprinter. Basically blew all our budget out fitting it out, and then we were ready to head back to Queensland, and long story short, it needed a new engine. The total bill for that came up at $18,000.
Hang on, you missed one part.
Well,
we were packed up and ready to go. We had left Darwin and we'd only driven 90 k's. Our lease had finished. We were ready to go. We were heading back to Queensland and we got 90 k's out of Darwin, and that's when we realized.
Anyway, we needed to come up with $18,000. So we did have an emergency fund, but we never expected that we would actually need to fork out that much in one hit. So you never know what can happen on the road. You just gotta be prepared and have an emergency fund.
Shit happens. Yeah, so there was no way around that at all. So 3 weeks later, $18,000 later, we were back on the road on the way to Queensland. About a month later, while we were in Queensland, I went into labour, ended up having emergency C-section, and our child Aiden only lived a few hours before he passed, unfortunately. So since then, we had a bit of recovery time, obviously, and we ended up retracing our steps back off the coast of Queensland, which was really, really nice and so different to our first time because it wasn't raining the whole time.
We didn't really have a plan, which is why we didn't care about retracing our steps before. So like we didn't have a big plan to see the whole country or whatever. We just wanted warmer weather and to swim at a few beaches and stuff. So
yeah, but what we realized throughout that trip was that having a bigger van means we have like a bigger living space. So when we were on our way back down the coast for Queensland, you'll remember last year towards the end of the year, cyclone just hit Cairns and Cape York. So all the aftermath, all the rain that came after that, we were having to deal with that. And if we were in a smaller van, it definitely wouldn't have been so pleasant dealing with that for weeks on end. This bigger van kind of gave us a bit of sanity.
yeah, we had a few solid weeks of rain in the Delika, and it was a nightmare. You just had to change your plans and do something but to escape it. Whereas in this van, you're just like, close the doors up and continue on. You can happily live in it. Plenty of space, and
you can get dry if you leave it. Whereas with the Delika, everything's just wet once you get back into the van. So that was lesson number 5.
So lesson number 6 is maintenance never ends. So we noticed during that heavy rain that we developed a few leaks, and we didn't have the leaks whenever we put the roof vents in and stuff, but just over time and driving, the sealant that you use, it's sitting baking in the sun all day, it stretches and tightens up. So we noticed that we had some leaks. There's just constant maintenance that needs done. Doesn't matter how good a job you do something in the first place, you're in the van, you're using it every single day. It's a vehicle and it's a home, so it's just there's so many different things that you just need to keep on top of, and if you don't keep on top of them, then
it'll fall apart.
Yeah, it falls apart and you end up being stuck somewhere, especially if you're somewhere remote. A little thing can just snowball and turn into a huge problem. So regular maintenance on the vehicle, just normal service and stuff, keep your tires in good shape, all that. Just we're in a heavy vehicle, so this has a GVM of over 5 tons, so it actually needs a yearly inspection anyway, which is another way to keep on top of things. So I like to do all the maintenance myself, but I can't check, I don't have a hoist or anything, so I can't check everything. So having that yearly inspection will keep us on top of all the other things that we can't normally check. But anything the van needs, we just do it, because you're going to need to do it eventually. So,
and it's peace of mind as well. Once you get it done, it's done.
Yeah, and then the inside stuff just wiggles and becomes loose. There's constantly different wiring and things, little terminals come loose. All of a sudden your power system isn't working as it should. Drawers come loose, drawer slides and stuff just become sloppy over time. Just 5 minutes ago there, I had to adjust the hinges on one of the overhead cupboards because it was catching off the other one. So it's good to be handy, and it's good when you're building the van to be aware of what actually goes where, and what things might need adjusted over time. Like our hot water system is placed under the sink, and it said in the manual it holds 10 kilos of water, but the weight of the actual system is about 10 kilos too, and it says that the amounts you use need to be able to hold 40 kilos. So knowing stuff like that, like I know that needs 40 kilos, and if it starts to loosen, it could fall off really quickly. There's a few times I've checked and the screws have started to become loose, so you just need to keep on top of things and just pay a lot of attention to your maintenance. So lesson number 7 is there's no perfect time to get on the road. In both of our vans, the first one we could have done with an extra week of just final touches, but you were really, really determined to leave at the start of April.
I really was.
So we got on the road and it was fine. There's stuff you can do on the road. There's stuff that within a week or a month isn't going to work and you have to change anyway. So trying to have everything perfect, it just doesn't work. As soon as you start actually living in the van, you notice so many things that need adjusted, or oh, I wish I had a hook here, or I wish, you know, this thing didn't rattle or something. So just get on the road,
Figure it out as you go.
see what you're working with, and you know,
Agreed.
just
get out
don't
there.
wait until, oh, I need to get this sorted, I need to get this sorted, I need to get this sorted. You can do so much on the road. You're shocking.
So we've definitely had some ups and downs over the last couple of years, but living on the road has really given us the freedom to really enjoy the country that we live in. And that brings me to lesson number 8, which is it's actually really affordable. Living and traveling in a van is a lot cheaper than you probably think, and we thought it would be cheap. We knew we could do it in a cheap way and not feel like we have to miss out on anything. But after doing the maths, it's actually cheaper than we thought. I do have a video on that as well, which I'll link as well. It's absolutely worth it. And that brings us to lesson 9.
So lesson number 9 is work is abundant. There's work available everywhere. So a lot of the times you'll just be passing through a town and you'll notice that specific town, everyone's looking work. Every business you go into, workers wanted. It's just, places are crying out. There's a lot of seasonal work available, so you can work in holiday parks or places that do seasonal tours. If you really want, you could do fruit picking or something like that. I've done that before, wouldn't recommend it, but some people like it. There's different farm stays you can do, you know. We've actually picked up some pet sits.
Pet sitting and house
sitting
along the way.
There's people who want their farms looked after while they go away, so you can just park up on their property and do an hour or 2 a day just feeding animals and
explore the local area if needed, if wanted.
And then if you've got some skills too, there's other work that you can do that you can be very well rewarded for. So if you're like a traveling nurse or a traveling teacher or something, especially in remote areas, it's well worth going out to.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the times your partner can just pick up a job in the area.
Yeah, so whether you're looking for something short term, if you want to just go hard at something, which is what we do, we just go hard at something and then save what we want to and then keep going. Whether you want to do that or whether you want to work and travel at the same time, there's work everywhere.
There's
no
also,
what you want to do.
I know a lot of people, just with the availability of Starlink now, they can be online all the time. So some people can transfer to remote work, or you know, keep their current job but start to do it remotely, and that works for a lot of people too. But we found just going and getting a job on the ground somewhere works better for us.
You'll have to be there to get the job. It's rather than trying to apply for something and be too organized like a month or 2 in advance, they kind of are more likely to say yes if you're
in the immediate area. Yeah.
Speaking of work, we are actually going to be heading back. We're not sure how long for at this point, but it'll probably be for about a year at least. If you're following along our travels from our weekly updates, our weekly vlogs, you'll see that we're in New South Wales at the moment. In real time, we're in South Australia, and we'll be slowly making our way back to the Northern Territory to start work there in about a month or so. But we do have a bit of a catch up of vlogs to do, so there'll be a lot more coming out over the next few months to catch up on.
The job we're going to is our old job that we had in the Northern Territory, so it's the same one with a lot of time off, so we should be able to still keep making vlogs. This time we're going to be living in the van on our days off rather than having an apartment or some other accommodation.
Be nice and warm up there.
And we'll be able to get used to it in the dry season, and then come the wet season we'll decide what we want to do, because it's not really viable to live in the van up there. It's okay being able to hide away from the rain, but when it's 40 degrees and raining,
everything goes moldy.
Yeah, it's just...
it's not enjoyable, we'll just put it that way, and that we're not about that. On that note, we'll end this here. Thank you for watching if you've made it all the way to the end, and like I said at the start, if you have any questions or suggestions about anything that we've shared here, or just want to say hi, comment below, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye.
Bye. Hashtag van life flies. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, but look at that.
What a view.